A new financial system and currency reset is around the corner, and it's 100% inevitable. In the early 1920s, Germany actually faced a severe hyperinflation situation with prices rising extremely fast that people actually needed bags of money just to buy some basic goods. Can you imagine needing a wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread or some coffee? That's actually what happened in Germany in the 1920s, a hyperinflation crisis. Despite the crisis, the government and central banks kept telling people and the public that the currency was stable, hoping obviously to prevent panic. Now, this example just shows that when a currency fails, governments and central banks are unlikely to admit the truth and instead interested in reassuring people in order to avoid chaos and panic in the streets, even if a collapse is 100% unavoidable. So if you believe that your currency or US dollar is secure just because the government and the mainstream media say so, it's actually worth taking a look back at history for a reality check. All fiat currencies lose value over time because governments and central banks increase the money supply to fund spending, stimulate the economy, and support corruption. Let's be honest. This expansion actually reduces the currency's purchasing power, causing inflation, meaning prices go up, and everything just costs more. Goods, services, food, rent, groceries. Now, currency devaluation isn't just a natural event. It's driven by political decisions that these central bankers make. So why does this matter? It matters because currency devaluation silently kills your wealth and your buying power. As prices rise, the value and your money in your pocket buys less, affecting everything from groceries to your savings. Understanding this hidden force is crucial. But what's even more important is understanding where this is going if you really want to protect your financial future. Because, ladies and gentlemen, things are changing very fast. As a student of history, I've studied how past resets have brought tough times for the unprepared. And that's why I'm making this video. I'm not fear-mongering here. This is all based on information that is public. All the data is out there, and this video is specifically to inform you about the challenges ahead of us, not just the opportunities and the positives. That's good to know too, but you also want to know what you're dealing with. Awareness gives you a real advantage, so you'll be ready for this major shift and the realities that are taking place when it actually does happen, and you won't be caught off guard. You don't want to just know about the hype and the positives. You want to know about the threat and what you're dealing with. That's how you really have an advantage in any business, in anything in the world. Every increase in the money supply brings us closer to hyperinflation. Since the gold standard ended in 1971, this endless money creation and spending raises a critical question. How long can it continue for? So this is exactly why a new financial system is inevitable, for two main reasons. First, the currency is approaching the end of its life cycle. It's quite obvious for anybody paying attention. It's steadily losing value and becoming unsustainable. Unfortunately, that's the reality we're dealing with. Now, secondly, blockchain technology and crypto actually represents a major threat to world leaders and central banks. And it's simple. It's because their decentralized nature, blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, allows people to store value and transact and store wealth outside of a centralized controlled system. Now, regardless of whether the central bankers or the intelligence agencies or the government were the original architects of blockchain technology from the start, regardless, it has evolved, and it does give people the power, only if it's not controlled. If the elites don't adopt, regulate, and control the new system, they risk losing the grip of centralized currencies that they've provided for centuries. And they lose the risk of controlling the people in this centralized, outdated financial system that we currently have. So crypto and what it's evolved into and the adoption by the private sector is a real threat to the central banks and the leaders and the shadow figures that actually control the money and the world. So a currency reset is the only solution for them.
With rising inflation, bank failures, and massive layoffs across multiple sectors, the future of the economy remains uncertain. It's no wonder the central banks have been getting prepared by stockpiling gold. At ITM Trading, we have spent over 27 years building a team of seasoned researchers and analysts who can help you prepare for any financial crisis. Our experts are ready to provide you with proven strategies to safeguard your wealth and assets in the event of an economic downturn or currency reset, which is frankly inevitable. Don't wait until it's too late. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call by clicking on the link in the description below.
As it offers them a way to integrate these technologies and adopt the blockchain and have it under their control and still retain their influence.
The key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also we will have the technology to enforce that.
So that's the threat that the crypto and blockchain sector is dealing with. And the threat that the central banks and the governments are dealing with is the evolution and the decentralized nature of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. So what can you do? The best way to protect yourself financially is to invest in assets that will retain or grow in value as we transition to a new financial system. So consider assets such as digital assets, gold, precious metals, stocks, real estate, art, and businesses. These assets will retain their value if you're in the right ones as we move into a new monetary and financial system. And also, try to aim and reduce your reliance on the government and build more independence. It's an ambitious thing to do, but trust me, it's worthwhile, and it's something my brother and I are personally trying to do. So let's zoom out for a second. So the US dollar has been the world reserve currency since the Bretton Woods Agreement, which took place in 1944, which established the US dollar as the primary currency for international trade and finance, and it was backed by gold. Although the gold standard was abandoned in 1971, the dollar still maintained its status as a dominant reserve currency for nearly 80 years we're approaching. The petrodollar system was later established in 1974. Now, this was shortly after the US abandoned the gold standard. Now, through the petrodollar agreement, Saudi Arabia, actually that's where I was born, Saudi Arabia committed to selling oil exclusively in US dollars in exchange for military, security, and economic support to the United States. Now, throughout history, dominant world powers have controlled the global economy through their reserve currencies. A reserve currency held in significant quantities by governments and institutions all around the world for international trade, investments, and other things reflects the issuing nation's economic might, stability, and trustworthiness. However, history shows us that these currencies, like the empires behind them, are rarely permanent and do come to an end at some point. History tells us that world reserve currencies generally last for about 80 to 110 years, and they're supported by strength and the stability of the nation behind them. Now, over time, however, these currencies tend to fail as empires overreach, accumulating more debt and inflating their currency, which is exactly what we're seeing now. And they're funding wars or ambitious projects, often lead to excessive spending, more debt, and poor policy choices can actually lead to a domestic and global confidence shift. And that's what we're seeing now. You see, the currency's influence fades as these pressures build up. And global partners eventually shift to alternatives. That's what we're seeing right now with BRICS and other nations across the world. You see, history shows us that no reserve currency lasts forever. Each one declines when economic strength and good governance give way too much away and have too much instability. World reserve currencies typically last around 80 to 110 years, and here's a timeline of past reserve currencies just so that you guys can see for yourselves and do your own research. The Portuguese escudo from 1450 to 1530, and it faded away. It collapsed. It was over. The Spanish real from 1530 to 1640. The Dutch guilder from 1640, it lasted to 1720. The British pound lasted from 1720 to 1944. That's the US dollar, now approaching the 80-year mark and showing signs we're clearly approaching the end of its cycle. The gold standard protected the value of fiat currencies by linking them to a specific amount of gold, limiting how much money could be printed based on the gold reserves. This helped prevent excessive money printing and inflation. Without the gold standard, governments could basically print unlimited currency without any backing. And that's what we've been seeing for the last decade. Now, leading to a decrease in value and rising prices. And that's been going on for a very long time. The crazy thing is the world operates in cycles. So financial markets, economies, asset classes, currencies, and even empires all follow a natural pattern. No matter how powerful they are, everything operates in cycles for the most part. So I can tell you what central banks will do. They will continue to print money, and currency debasement will continue pushing fiat currencies closer to the end of their cycle until a shift takes place, and that's the currency reset. This is why central banks and powerful entities behind the scenes have long been preparing a new financial system to replace the current failing one. This has been a long-term plan because they know and they knew that at some point this time would come. Central bankers and governments don't make major changes to the financial system on a whim. These moves are carefully planned and calculated long in advance. So when they announce or implement changes, you can be sure that it's part of a strategy that's been in the works for a long time. For instance, de-dollarization is really happening. People think it's a myth. Some people say it's nonsense, but the truth is, it actually is happening. And BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and many more joining them, are actually exploring a new currency system that would be backed 40% by gold, with the support from Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff and the new development bank. And they're all planning and having meetings behind the scenes. What we see on the news is just the surface. We don't know what else is taking place behind the scenes. And I can assure you, it's much more than what we're being told. And the plans are actually coming to life. In summary, we're experiencing a currency reset, a financial system reset, with the current system crumbling to the ground because it's so overdue, it's outdated, and it's clearly not working for us, but it is working for them. And the US dollar is approaching the end of its life cycle, and history shows that reserve currencies and fiat systems eventually fail, and a new one always rises from the ashes. This new system is built on blockchain technology, which will feature stablecoins and CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. While it's no surprise historically, it's surreal to actually live through all of this. It's a crazy moment in history, and we're actually living through it, especially as most people remain unaware of what's even happening. So what do you do about it? What is the solution to this problem taking place in the world when it comes to your finances and your investments? The solution is to save and invest. Invest in assets that will retain their value as we transition from an old system to a new system. Invest in assets that are undervalued. Invest in assets that will be adopted, and invest in assets that have held their value historically over time and that are in demand by the ones that control the world and control the money. And make sure to protect your assets as well, because the last thing you want to do is invest in things or assets that could get stolen from you, that could get destroyed, that can get confiscated or taken. At the end of the day, we have to act on the information we have. There's nothing else we can do. So with that said, best of success to all of you in your investments, in your life, with your families, and prepare ahead of time. Don't wait till the last minute. I'll see you guys next time.